And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And you can also go to our website, KIDOTalkRadio.com, for the latest, including Idaho's Most Wanted. Joining us now from the Media Research Center is Allie Nielsen. Allie, good to have you with us.
Good morning, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, no problem. So we have this, it's almost like we used to read about in school, this never-ending war. And it's not really a war, but a battle of ideals, if you will. And the Media Research Center always on the front lines, holding the press accountable. When it comes to their thoughts on the president, I mean, the president could have the economy at, the GDP at 5%. And they'd say, well, it should be at 10%. How does the media do a disservice to America in their reporting?
Well, they do that by not telling the full story. It's no secret that the media dislike Trump. And the individuals in the media don't, they're going to have their personal opinions. They just are. I have mine, you have yours. You can't, just utterly get rid of your own preferences. But what you have to do is tell the full story. You have to tell the good, tell the bad, and, make sure it's accurate and let other people decide. And that's really where the media does a disservice, is because they don't do that. They will go on and on and on and on and on about the bad and, exaggerate things to be bad that, may not be bad otherwise. And then they'll just ignore things like, all the great economic news we had in the last year, the stock market, GDP growth, all this stuff, all this business confidence that the New York Times just wrote about. And by ignoring that, they're depriving the American people of the full story. And they're ultimately being dishonest and undermining, ultimately, their own credibility. And so sooner or later, this is going to come back and bite them when people, even just look at them and say, hey, look, I'm not getting the full story from you. I'm not going to trust you.
Incredible when you think about that. Incredible when you think about, Allie, you watch the Sunday shows and they just focus in on the negative stuff. Well, the Russians and Trump did this, and they ignore the Uranium One stories. They ignore issues of real value to the American public. I'd like to think it wasn't always that way, but it seems like it is in the last 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, the interesting thing about this is, when you have businesses doing well, you have businesses confident and willing to take risks, make investments, grow, because the climate is pro-business. It's like the media ignore the fact that it's businesses, by and large, who, employ us. They pay our bills. If it weren't for businesses, nobody'd have any money. Nobody'd have any houses, cars, nothing. Would all be, homeless and most likely dead. And that's just the reality of it. And so it's nonsense to not be excited and be positive about businesses doing well, because when they do well, when there's deregulation, when, they're free to have more freedom in what they're going to do, make their own choices, then they can do things like, guess what, raise wages. And isn't that what, the media was all about in 2015, 2016, Fight for 15? They wanted to regulate higher wages. But if you just get off businesses' backs, don't regulate them into an impossible corner, then they're going to be free to make those kinds of decisions entirely on their own.
Indeed. Allie Nielsen joining us, Media Research Center here at KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller in the morning. So, Allie, we take a look at, these issues involving North Korea. I couldn't believe where Martha Raddatz was, trying to, I can't even think of the verb for this, where she was shaming, and that's not what she was doing. She was almost belittling the president of the United States for antagonizing the leader of North Korea. Never mind what this guy has done to his own people and to others. But it was, again, another example of the president can't do anything right.
No, it is. It is. And actually, I was just reading an article this morning before I talked to you from Poynter Institute, which is it's a little bit more of a liberal journalism outlet. But even they were making the point that the media's reaction to Trump's tweet is going to make the entire situation worse. Like, the media is the one actually causing the problem. And they were making the point, look, Trump is going to say what he's going to say. North Korea is going to say what they're going to say. There's still that mutual deterrence of millions of people will die either way. The chances of Trump or, North Korea hitting that button this morning, acting on what they said is very small. But the media reaction to that, the 24/7 just panic and freaking out, that's what's going to, ultimately turn this into a bigger thing than the president tweeting something that, you may or may not think was smart, or you may or may not think was kind of immature, or whatever you think about it. The media's obsession with it is ultimately going to be the bigger problem.
Indeed. Allie, we continue on here. We have this great tax deal going on, and you have the media that doesn't report that, just, again, focuses on the negative. And you go back to the Obamacare and, the repeal of that, and they're saying, well, millions of Americans are going to be without insurance. Well, there are millions of Americans that are still without insurance because of Obamacare. They can't afford it. They can't afford the fine. You look at states where the premiums have just exploded, and yet we only get one side of the story, the one that's going to pull your emotional heartstrings.
Well, and it's even actually worse than that. And I went back and was looking into the initial report. I think it was the CDC report that came out about it when they were first trying to repeal it. And the CDC report made some statement about, like, I think 14 million people will lose their health care coverage. Don't quote me on that number. It might be wildly off. It just seems like the right number. But, they're saying X number of people will be without insurance. And that's the number the media ran with. And they're like, oh, look at all these people losing their insurance. Well, if you actually read through the report, those are the people that are electing not to have health insurance once the individual mandate is gone. So it's not that if you repeal Obamacare, it's going to violently rip these people's health care away and they're going to be left, destitute without this thing they need. That's people making their own choice. You know what? I'm not going to pay for this. It's not worth it. I'm healthy. I'm fine. And so that, right there is a huge misleading thing for the media to say, oh, all these people are going to be without health insurance. It's no. All these people are going to be able to make a choice for themselves without the government telling them what to do. And if they elect not to have health insurance, then that's their choice.
Allie Nielsen joining us here at KIDO Talk Radio. She's from the Media Research Center now. Allie, I believe you have a lot less miles on the odometer than yours truly here. But and I want to thank you for being a young person holding people accountable. But what do you make of the impact and I see this with my coworkers, young and old, that they'll see something on the networks and they take it as gospel. Trump bad, Hillary good, Trump bad, Obama good. And it seems, again, when people just tune into a network, the lack of critical thinking skills, not challenging the reporting, whether they read it in the paper or online or on television or the radio.
No, I completely agree. And I don't know if you or your readers have read the book. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death, and I totally forget the name of the author right now. But
Okay.
It was written back in the 80s, which, I mean, it was written in the 80s, and it's talking about amusing ourselves to death. And now we have social media, cell phones, and all this stuff, and I can't imagine what you would think of that. But, yeah, the argument he made was that basically when the regular, I guess, normal, quote unquote, or standard media changed over from newspapers to television, it turned into entertainment. So people sit down in front of a television, whether it's the news, whether it's the latest Netflix show, people subconsciously are going there to just be entertained, and they're not going to interact with it. So you're absolutely right. People do look at it. They take it at face value. One, because they, expect the media to tell the full story and be unbiased. But at the same time, you're also kind of watching it for entertainment as well. It's not, it doesn't require the same mental engagement that even just reading an article does, in a newspaper or even on your phone. And, I mean, the only way to really combat that is to actively engage with what you're reading, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and just ask, hey, is this true? Or maybe you hear something and then go Google it. Look around for a couple different perspectives on it and see if you're getting the full story. And that takes a lot more work than just sitting down in front of a TV does, but it's ultimately going to get you a better perspective than if you just take whatever you hear or see at face value.
Indeed. Now, an organization you're affiliated with, proudly, newsbusters.org, it's a great piece here, and I'm not going to ambush you and go, well, you should know what's on it. Sometimes you look at these things, Allie, and sometimes you don't, but it's funny because I was looking at the big Hoda. Hoda's the new co-host on the Today Show, and I'm going, well, that's good because she's really non-offensive, but then we have the headline from newsbusters.org, more bias in the morning, Hoda Kotb's worst quotes, and it goes on about racial injustice, voting Republican equals hold your nose election. It's amazing that here we have someone that's, and look, Matt Lauer, before you had the allegations and everything else, he was certainly not objective. And you look at the history of the Today Show with Katie Couric, very uncomfortable to conservatives or moderates or anyone. But it's amazing that this is being hailed as such a great thing, and yet we have this bias. Of course, we would never have a conservative person on one of these shows.
Well, you're right. And that's because, by and large, everyone who could be up for that open position is most likely going to be liberal. But then also the media look at it, look at this year, look at Trump's election, Trump's administration as being something, totally new. And we have to throw out the real book, journalism ethics maybe. And, this is
right.
Completely different. We have to behave completely different, and suddenly everyone is editorializing. Everyone's, being a commentator, and they think they can get away with it because, there are things that Trump will do or say that, not everyone's going to approve of. There's probably things that he said that very few people would approve of. And they think that they can, because he says whatever he feels like saying on Twitter, that they can say whatever they feel like saying on television. And, they can criticize him and belittle him and, not bring that objectivity when they really should. But yeah, like you said, there's always going to be, some example of them being biased because by and large, every person in the broadcast networks, on the morning and evening news shows, has some sort of bias and has probably shown it at least one or two times, not more.
Allie, what should we be looking out for this week as Congress gets back to work, the president gets back to work? Of course, we're going to have more reporting on how much time he takes off, not about how much time sleep that he doesn't get. It's amazing, again, the bias here. But what should we be looking out for?
We should definitely be looking for the way the networks cover whatever ends up being done about the budget. Because, I remember even during the Obama administration, we ran into, a similar situation of there being a pending government shutdown. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the media treats this versus that. And then, the tax plan as that goes into effect and all that stuff are all going to be really interesting things to track in the media.
Allie, thank you. You have a good day.
You too. Thanks so much, Kevin.
All right. Our great friend Allie Nielsen joining us from the Media Research Center. Kevin Miller in the morning. It is, it is time to take your phone calls. Will the president ever get a break at 580-5436, 580-KIDO? And yesterday we were talking about California and marijuana. Well, today Oregon has a law that went into the books that if they think that you're a danger, just an allegation of that you might be a little too loud or whatever, well, they can take your guns. I'll tell you about it next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And don't forget, at 6 o'clock, right after Sean Hannity, our friend Lars Larson. That's right, Big Lars in the house from 6 to 9, followed by Ground Zero, followed by Coast to Coast. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So we've got a new law, Senate Bill 719 in Oregon, created a process by which a judge can issue an extreme risk protection order to seize an individual's guns if petitioned by a law enforcement officer or a family member. Now, how can they take your guns? The petition must show the person in question is an immediate risk to themselves or others through a statement or an affidavit. Then the court will consider, in part, whether you've had a history of suicide threats or attempts, history of physical violence, previous convictions for stalking, domestic violence, or cruelty towards animals, and previously unlawful and reckless use of a deadly weapon. If the petition is made, the court will hear the case and deny or issue an order that very day. Now, do you get a chance to respond, or are these just allegations? Because we can make allegations against a lot of people. Once again, our signal does go into Oregon. God bless you in Oregon. Come to Idaho. That's where everybody else is. We go to Liberal Steve, who joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberal Steve.
Alexa, turn on Miller in the morning. Good morning, Mr. Miller.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. And you got to quit calling me Timmy. You know, it's bad as calling the new governor Tommy. Well, Miller, I don't think Romney will be elected in Salt Lake, Utah, which is Utah. I mean, that's pretty much where the majority of votes get nailed. He won't be elected if he runs because he was so against Trump when he was running for president. So that won't happen. What do you think? Oh, and I believe in testing for drugs. I think they should really...
Well, before we get to you and the drugs, I believe that Mitt Romney, if he runs, is going to win. And here's the other issue that people aren't talking about. He's got the name ID. He's got the money. If he wants to be a senator, I don't know. I mean, he's in his 60s. I would just retire and ski all the time and hang out with the kids and the grandkids and the great-grandkids. But a lot of people are pressed to serve. Now, when you're talking about, see, this is what I'm fascinated about. And by the way, thanks for missing the Christmas party. We appreciate that.
You're more than welcome. I something happened I can't share with you.
All right. Well, I'm sorry about that, legitimately, not being disingenuous. So the idea with Mitt Romney, who in fact could run, could win, you talk about that he was against Trump, but those folks in Utah, they weren't down with Trump. I mean, what did Evan McMullen get, like 20%, 30% of the vote there? So it's a fascinating case. It's an outlier. Now, you go to a place like, I don't know, Ohio or Pennsylvania or the South, and you say Trump, and you've got those old blue dog Democrats that are all about Trump. But it's different in the West, particularly the Intermountain West. Look at how many people here were all about Ted Cruz. Look at how many people here, in Utah with Senator Lee got on the floor of the convention and was going, we want an open blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of, that might play fairly well being behind Mitt Romney. I can't see Utah not voting for Mitt Romney. Look, Mitt Romney is playing here. He endorsed Governor Otter. He endorsed Dr. Alquist. Now, again, we're not Utah, but I think with his ties with the faith-based community, his political ties, his money, his name ID, I can't see him not being beat. Again, they're smart in those things. They'll have 5 conservatives. That's how Lindsey Graham gets elected in South Carolina.
Absolutely. Yep. But I still say he won't make it. Something will come up. They'll pull something out of the closet.
Now, how old is Mitt Romney, do you think?
Oh, golly, I imagine he's pushing 70.
He's 70 years old. Okay.
I don't know. Is he 70? I don't know.
He's 70. Now,
okay.
How old are you?
I'm 66.
Okay, you're retired. You do things with you want. If you don't have to work, why would you work? Why would you go through that if you don't have to? Well, I'm called to serve. Really? You're going to be the junior senator from Utah?
I don't understand it, but it's their thing, It's their thing. They're into leadership.
You enjoy your retirement, do you not?
Yes, absolutely. Every single day.
Sure.
So back to...
back to you and the drugs?
No, UFOs and all that stuff going on. I think 2018 will be the big thing for UFOs being accepted by the world and by America. But I was
what are you
just
talking
gonna
about?
say,
That's like a civil right?
Yes, absolutely. They're out there, and it's going to be totally exposed in 2018.
Some people say you're out there.
I don't think it'll slow up the doctrines. Are you in favor of testing for drugs, Kevin?
Yes. I think you want to solve the drug problem, you test for drugs. Now, blood pressure and cholesterol, that's off the books. That's too personal.
I'm in favor of testing for drugs, too. That's why I try them all.
And thank you, Liberal Steve. Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work. And Kevin Miller in the morning. Coming up, we'll talk a little bit about the Iranian situation, and then we'll hear from our friend Max on the media bias against the president. Good morning. You're listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, more on this law in Oregon where people think that you're a danger to society. They can just take your gun. Plus, California, the people continue to embrace legalizing marijuana, which we did get into previously, and we'll take your calls on that. A lot going on here today as we move along, and the idea of giving us an alternative to the media and how they portray things. And we'll take a look at the newest co-host of the Today Show and her past media biases, examples of her media bias, and what it means for reporting. I mean, look, you have critical thinking skills. I attempt sometimes to have critical thinking skills, and I want to make sure that, we challenge everything. Sometimes we like to listen. But on the other hand, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, you have many people, maybe it's your coworkers, maybe it's people in your family, that they just see something, or if they see it on Facebook, then they believe it's true without challenging anything. I think that is really missing in our society today, challenging what we see and what we hear. Joining us now, our great friend from London via Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio, Simon Owen. Simon, welcome back. Happy New Year.
Hey, Kevin, and to you.
Simon, I use this line a lot, so it's a compliment. So here we go. I've got a lot of miles on the odometer. Now, I don't know how prevalent the Iranian story has been in your lifetime, but for me it has been. Going back to 79 and when they took over the embassy, it's always been the first chance that we in the United States heard of death to America. Now that's back. So the Iranian-American relationship, at least in my perspective and our perspective that grew up with when they took the hostages in 79, have always been a big story. So we're always interested in what's going on with Iran. We remember back in, 2007, 2008, where they had the latest uprising and protest that didn't happen. So now we have another version of that. And could you give us the details on what's happening in Iran, or as we used to call it, Persia?
Yeah, death to America, the old chant over there, death to Israel. We've heard both of those today on Iranian state TV, which has been broadcasting pro-government rallies, which it says are taking place across the country, and those are the classic chants for pro-government rallies. Death to America is the one that we hear all the time. In recent days, though, it's been the opposite, and it's been death to Rouhani, who is the president, and death to Khamenei, who is the supreme leader of Iran. Rare, unusual anti-government protests across that country for 6 days or so, and I say or so because it's hard to get a totally accurate picture of what's going on in Iran. It's a country where journalist movements are restricted. It's rare for us to even get visas at all as Western reporters. But we have built up a picture of a wave of protests and deadly unrest in recent days. Began last Thursday in a city called Mashhad, since spread to many other towns and cities. The numbers we have, again, reliant on various sources. State TV says at least 20 people have been killed, and we think hundreds of protesters have been arrested. It potentially could be thousands. And there is an indication that Iran's leadership is taking this quite seriously, not because the supreme leader himself surfaced yesterday, hadn't commented on the protests in 4 or 5 days, but Ayatollah Ali Khamenei spoke out. He blamed Iran's enemies and said that those enemies are stirring up these problems.
Yeah, it's always the enemies that are stirring up the problems. You wonder whether it's just more of the same, that we're going to have the protest, the mullahs will crack down, and then we just move on to other things. Although President Trump is viewed this a little differently than I think any other U.S. president in recent memory.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you have followed President Trump's opinions and policies on foreign policy, it's not a secret that he is not a fan of the Iranian regime, and he is certainly throwing his weight behind the protesters. At the same time, what he's done is send a few tweets about them, which is not enough. If you were talking about major change, you have to do more than that, and he has said that there will be U.S. support, but he hasn't said what it is. There's no specifics there. There is the other argument here, which is that there's a fair amount of anti-American sentiment in Iran. As you say, the default chant is death to America when there are protests. And so anything that President Trump does that allows the Iranian leadership to turn around and say, well, look, you're just doing the Americans' bidding here, that is not going to help the protesters' cause, potentially, I would suggest. So it's a complicated thing. You can't just say, the America supports them and then that lead regime change, if that's what President Trump wants to see, or whatever. As to whether these might peter out, I think there's still a high chance of that. Certainly when it gets towards the week-long mark, as these demonstrations are now, you have to take them seriously, and it is notable that they're happening at all. But it's not even clear quite what prompted the initial protest. We think it's to do with the economy, but there's no great organization here, no national figures who are heading these protests up, unlike previous unrest in Iran. And without that leadership, it's hard to know whether it has the legs, if you like, to carry on going on its own. It might do. No one knows for sure. And whether they're going to, this is a country with a powerful security apparatus. They have threatened strong measures to crack down. But actually, in reality, on the ground, we haven't seen much. It's been relatively restrained. I appreciate a number of people have died, but it could have been a lot bloodier, and it hasn't yet. So does Iran know that the world is watching and it's choosing its tactics carefully? I suspect they are hoping that, uncomfortable as it is, they can ride this out and in a few days it will go away. But we just don't know yet.
Simon, we appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, our great friend Simon Owen. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's hear what you have to say. Good morning, Max. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning. I hope you had a happy New Year.
It is being here with you, sir.
Oh, thank you, sir. I'm living the dream. I wanted to address a couple of different things. I think I wanted to start with this Oregonian law. I find it absolutely incredible. It's already been bad enough that a man or a woman can simply make a statement to the police and bam, there's a restraining order in their hand. And most states will take away your gun if you're under a restraining order. A restraining order is treated as a crime. Well, Oregon is taking it up another notch. Now, it's insane. I don't know how laws like that get past open-eyed, intelligent people, and it leaves me with the unfortunate, I have to just assume that there are very few wide-eyed, intelligent people left in Oregon. It's insane. How can they justify it? That means any judge can just say, yeah, there's a history. He might say bad words to her and hurt the children's feelings. Bam. There he goes.
Lights out Sally.
It's just not right. And if you read my book, Paper Dragon, about the Chinese people, look at their culture. And there are some remarkable and worrisome parallels. China, of course, already has these draconian laws in place based on one simple fact, and that is that no one has any guaranteed rights of any kind. But their newspapers and our newspapers now, and their TV and radio, just like in America, they don't have any news anymore. All they have is opinion. Reporters have become columnists. A columnist can write whatever he wants. Heck, I could be a columnist. I put a lot of my heart into books like Eyes on China and Paper Dragon. But I'm not pretending to be a newsman or a reporter. How do we let them get away with it? How can we differentiate between news and opinion, or what I just call what it is, propaganda?
Max, great call.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
You notice how Max got his product placement in several times there. Very, very astute. He's learning. Cindy, good morning. You're on with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Cindy.
Well, good morning, Kevin. I also do like when you have your ads and purport products that I actually, I won't say enjoy, but I actually occasionally partake in. So thank you for having your new, I don't know if it's new, your Revolution vodka. Obviously, your value system will usually dictate what you choose to do or not. And mine is, since I'm not of another faith base, I do occasionally have some Revolution vodka over at Indian Creek. And so I like your new ads, and that's just the truth. And I
it's, the folks at American Revolution Vodka, and look, I don't drink.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't drink. And I could swear on a whatever. I could take a lie detector. I've never had hard liquor in my life, wine occasionally at church, and I've tasted like a beer, like a little sip when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Okay, but those folks love the show, so they sponsor an hour. They're local folks, they're veterans, but I don't want people to think that I drink, because I don't. But we proudly support people that support this program.
Well, you know what? I do have a very strong, I'm an Orthodox evangelical Christian who took an RCA course to partake in the Mass with my husband, who is Polish Catholic. So that said, when you're talking about the America of today, why would I say in a radio, Mormons don't drink either, and yet I support it. I mean, they didn't do a lot of things that, they don't believe in a lot of things that I do about my God, but the reality is you will act out on your value system, and that is what's happened in America. They don't, I agree just with what Max said. It is not just propaganda. They mock, denigrate. They actually hate Donald Trump. They will do everything. They don't even know that in my Bible, I had 8 years of swallowing a mulatto president. He's not all black, and I'm so sick of people not saying what somebody is, and what they do is really what they do. So I don't choose to ever turn on, I call it secular biased TV or any of those stations. I listen to, obviously, where am I going to go to get fed? I read a lot of books. But if I ever think that anything that is out there with decades of moral relativism into the United States, it's just such hypocrisy that's out there. And even with Mitt Romney, and I am disgusted. I made thousands of calls for him. And when he jumped ship like the Loyalists in the American Revolution, couldn't even understand what the end game was with our president, it literally sickened me. Like, you are so not having things to struggle with like sin, that you would point the finger at that man. I'm sickened with what happened in Alabama. I like what your Lars Larson said real quick on the radio. He said allegations that will probably, who knows if they'll ever be proven, and then look what happened, because people got to feel this guilt thing, because that's what they do. That's why they do Purple Kish. That's why on New Year's Eve you have a sin-sick woman, demonstrating to, I used to stay up at 8 years old and watch, things on TV. She's demonstrating how this guy is using a bong. And the only thing I can think of with gas masks is our military have had to put those on. It's just sickening out there, but you just keep pushing forward. You listen to quality talk shows with all the people you've had on this morning, with your young lady from Media Research to get some information, and you just go on. I mean, I thank you for being here, Kevin, for those of us who have some love for our country, America, and who are not just feeling-based driven, but have some social conscience about other people. So I'm going on to have a blessed day. I was blessed to be cleaning up a house yesterday for one of our veterans, for a great group in this, in this area that's built him a house, and I will be out there doing what I can do to push forward and push back against this moral relativism.
We're right there with you, Cindy.
I know you are, Kevin. That's why I'm talking to you right now. You just go, Kevin, go.
God bless.
God bless you, too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, coming up next, the best of Hoda with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio from our friends at Newsbusters. And I don't know how many people have watched the show, the sitcom Blackish. It's on ABC television, and it involves a black family, and you have a lot of humor in it and such. Well, apparently they've decided to focus in on white guilt. I guess that's supposed to be entertaining. The Blackish grandmother teaches kids to prey on white guilt to cheat at school. Now, look, one of the most outstanding things about living here in the Treasure Valley is you don't have racial animosity. You don't have hateful language. You don't have bigotry. One of the only places in America where we can say that on every side of the line of scrimmage. So it's very rare that I'll jump into a race story. Now, other places you would do this and it would blow up quite a bit. So essentially what they did is to get out of homework, the grandmother teaches the kids to focus in on a white guilt. So the kids go to the private school that is mostly white students. The teacher says something to them, hey, why didn't you do your homework? And here's how it goes. Before she hands you the test, just look in the newspaper, find a tragedy that happened to a black person and say, that happened to my cousin. Yeah, white women will buy it like Oprah's selling it. Now, again, this is on ABC television. The next day, she tells the teacher, our cousin was fatally struck by gunfire last night while visiting friends at the 1400 block of Southwestern Avenue, to which the teacher, who is white, replies, quote, the hood is so cruel. Not only are the kids excused from the test, the teacher excuses them from all homework for the rest of the week. And they're feeling very proud of themselves when their older brother jumps in on this. And again, this is not uniting America, this humor on Blackish.
Thanks to you, we never have to do schoolwork again. Yeah. We just have to pray on white guilt, and that is a well that will never run dry.
You cheated? As a member of the honor committee, I am obligated to tell the school.
No, you're not.
I'm going to call my faculty mentor.
Junior? Oh, come on now. Don't narc on the babies. Look, the way I see it, the system's already stacked up against us, right? So sometimes we have to bend the rules a little just to get a fair shake.
So there we have it again at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Now, these are young children. And, you know, we could talk about innovations in television, whether it was All in the Family or the Jeffersons or what have you. Probably not Happy Days, but you know where I'm going with this. And now we have television making fun of this. Well, it's white guilt, and we have things in universities criminalizing people for being white. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine when you see children that don't see color, to be indoctrinated with this stuff from ABC television? It just breaks my heart.
Schoolwork again. Yeah. We just have to pray on white guilt, and that is a well that will never run dry.
We have to pray on white guilt, and that is a well that will never run dry. It's kind of like what happens when crime is reported. If it's a white suspect, well, he's white. You can always tell when he's not because nobody reports the race. Now, you go back to the idea of equality. Shouldn't we treat everybody equally? And some people say, well, look at what happened with these shootings and such. You're right. But to falsely accuse someone of racism is about the worst thing you can do to them personally and professionally in America today. And like I said, it's one of the reasons why I'm really not down with this show. Never thought it was going to be funny. And when you have folks in one racial community making fun of others and guilting them and using children, I don't find this entertaining. Do you?
We never have to do schoolwork again. Yeah. We just have to pray on white guilt, and that is a well that will never run dry.
You cheated? As a member of the honor committee, I am obligated to tell the school.
No, you're not.
I'm going to call my faculty mentor.
Junior? Oh, come on now. Don't narc on the babies. Look,
Don't narc on the babies. And by the way, this is the grandmother, the role model, who says, you know, the system is against us. Right? So let's strike one back at the man.
way I see it, the system's already stacked up against us, right? So sometimes we have to bend the rules a little just to get a fair shake.
Right. Teaching children to lie and to ignite racism. Maybe that's a little harsh, but it's just my take on this. Shame on ABC television for running this and calling it entertainment. Again, when we start going, well, this is unfair, then we look at things through identity politics, which identity politics will never win in America. When people say, Donald Trump, he's being racist by saying, make America great again. Why? Because we want Americans to work and not the people from other countries? It's crazy. Look at our society today. You have people that you bump into and they go, oh, I'm sorry. Nobody wants to be offensive. Nobody wants to take responsibility. It's just crazy. Traffic and weather together. And I'm Kevin Miller in the morning here. Coming up next, Fox News on the radio. And then the issue involving this one.
The use of marijuana needs to be done in a responsible manner that's consistent with the law. Just as people use alcohol, people use other types of substances that are lawfully allowed, the department will pay close attention to the use of marijuana in a vehicle, to a person driving impaired, to the person selling or furnishing marijuana to a minor. Those are all illegal actions, and the department will take aggressive action in enforcing the law.
We'll tell you which state that's from next. It's not Idaho. Kevin Miller.